every single moment that I've been playing has just been pure joy and delight. It's a really specific happy feeling that I don't think I've felt since I was a kid. And that's just the beginning. Like there's something new every corner. Like when I go out to explore a map and an area because I'm that type of gamer. And it's so smartly designed. So first of all, I want to say congratulations on making such an amazing
Wow.
game such as Astro Bot. I want to ask you, how are you feeling about the launch? I mean, are you excited? Are you nervous? How do you deal with things like reviews and scores and things of that nature? And how do you not get affected by it?
Oh, wow. Well, thank you for, first of all, nice to meet you, Sarah, and thank you so much for the kind words as well, because everything you described, about going around the little corners and finding little rewards, it's really great because it's exactly what, as we have to be there to answer the promise. People go around and they expect, and we have to be there to answer the expectation with like little rewards and things like that. And the fact that you saw that and you appreciate it, it means a lot to us, so thank you. In terms of the reviews, of course, yeah, I'm excited, super excited to finally get in the hands of people, but also nervous because we take it very seriously. We want to be perfect, as perfect as we can be. We you know I mean, not to the point that the reviews and the scores are one thing, but at the end of the day, the way people talk about the game, sometimes we get letters sent to us by parents who tell us, oh, this is my kid's like first platinum game and something like that, and these are not things that you read on the internet. These are kind of so we have to think about the global, like the totality of the feedback of the players.
Mhm.
But of course, what we read on the net, we do read everything, and we discuss it and analyze, and we take it very seriously. Yeah.
Now, personally, for me, I mean, I do not have human children. I have fur babies, and unfortunately, they can't play the PlayStation yet. But I understand how, like what you said, this could be a bridge between these two generations of like the parents and the kids being able to play this game together, and the parents being able to instill like knowledge or tidbits of what their childhood was like growing up. I feel like this is a game that can truly say it's a game for all ages, especially with all that history that PlayStation has had. And I notice after playing it for a couple of hours, there are some items there which are not available either on the Western market or weren't available in the European market. Kind of like the, I think, Portal Station. If I'm sorry, I was just thinking of the PlayStation Portal, but the Pocket
Yeah.
Station, which was there, and I was able to first discover that through this game, and I think that's just amazing. So, how did that idea come about of like including every single product that PlayStation has ever created into the game?
Yeah, it's exactly, in fact, exactly what you described. So first of all, there's when we think about, okay, we're gonna have to do a tribute to PlayStation, what we have to do on research back in Astro Room when we did the hardware, and this time around with the characters, we had to think about, which one should we fit in. And you have your classic kind of blockbusters, the ones that everybody knows, and the modern ones. Okay, these ones are no-brainer, they're gonna go in. And then there's all the characters that that were blockbusters, but perhaps are no longer active, or perhaps like from PS1, PS2 era. And then you have these obscure ones, and that's the most fun because they're the ones you know that by doing them, a lot of people are going to maybe see them for the first time. But those who know and they remember, and it's kind of it tells a different story.
Mm-hmm.
So Pocket Station is one example. There's one of my favorite characters in the game is a chef that you unlock, and the chef is from a cooking game that came out on PlayStation only in Japan. That was for the DualShock controller, so you could use the sticks to kind of like pour beer and like fry kind of things. And that's a game that only came out in Japan, but still it had some popularity among the people who imported video games. And then vice versa, we have some characters that are only like from America and or North America and Europe. So it's a selection. We have to be as inclusive as we can. We have to try. Of
Mm-hmm.
course, we can't fit everyone under the sun, so we have to be fair, but also use our own gut feeling. And it's a combination of that. And then in the end, we ended up with this selection of 150 cameos. Yeah.
Oh wow. You know what? It's funny that you mentioned fair because for me I had a specific emotion as well playing the game. It felt like every single piece that you included in Astrobot, you gave them justice more than the word fair. Like, even if it might not seem like a big part or it was a little part in the game, for me, it felt like, oh, this is perfect. Like, you did it so well. By the way, Eric Williams, the director of God of War Ragnarok,
Oh yeah.
amazing person, by the way. I got to meet him yesterday.
Oh,
It's funny because I like met him for the first time. This is the first time I ever talked to him, and you would think that we would talk about God of War Ragnarok, but which is, by the way, God of War is my favorite franchise. But we were just talking about Astrobot and how amazing of a game it is. And I think he told me that he told you what Astrobot is, and that's Astrobot is joy encapsulated, and that's something that I wholeheartedly agree with because I've just been smiling from ear to ear ever since I started to play it. And the more we talk about it, the more I guess I just wanted you to know how special of a game you made. So again, congratulations on that.
wow, that's
Yeah.
really
So
nice. You
do
know that, yeah. Oh, Eric, yeah, yeah. Eric came over to Japan and actually and played the game because there is a God of War level in the game, and we discussed how to do all these things, and he gave us a lot of feedback, but also a lot of support, a lot of love. Instantly those guys were on board. They said, "Yeah, absolutely, you got to do it," because he was quite scary when we first approached them, and we went like, "We would like to put Kratos in the game, but it's not just a cameo. We
Mhm.
want to do a whole level," and they were like, "Yeah, come on, do it. We'll give you some help." So that was really, really nice. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, okay, full disclosure, I'm not yet on that level, so let's not talk too much
Okay.
about it. But I heard there's a super cool level, and so I heard from Eric that you guys nailed it, and it's true to the source material, and I can't wait to play that level. And I want to ask if you could tell us how early along in the development that it was decided that you guys wanted to include God of War, that you guys wanted to do this, and what can you tell me about the collaboration between the studios, not just with Santa Monica Studios, but with all of them on this game, Astrobot?
So it's a really interesting topic actually. So when we began on this game, the question of whether we should still celebrate the PlayStation history was a real question because there was a debate as to, okay, if we do that again, Astro will not spread its own wings and be its own thing, right? We don't want the PlayStation history to be almost like too much of a safety net. So we developed the game, the levels, the power-ups, the enemies first in the Astro universe. But then it kept feeling like, okay, as a gamer, as a lover of PlayStation, the previous game did a tribute, and this time around, if there isn't one, we'd be disappointed. Right.
Mhm.
So we added that. We decided, no, we're going to do it. But the important part is to not repeat ourselves. So the previous game was all about the hardware. This game should be about the characters. So that's when we decided to include the cameos. And then there was always this thing of, oh, would it be cool? How would it feel like if you played a cartoon version of X or Y characters? And that's when these ideas, these five kind of special heroes, came up. And so we concepted it. At the time, it was just visual, right? And then we literally had a video call with those teams. And asked, hey guys, so you've seen Astro's Playroom, you kind of get a feel for the kind of games we make. If we were to go one step further and try to bring your IP into the Astro world, and how would you feel about it? And yeah, it was a really, really open and super positive conversation. And so once we had uh, one of those realized, then it became much easier because we had a standard, we had a benchmark, and then actually it was easier to kind of talk to the other teams because they could imagine better, how it would end up. Yeah.
Yeah, and oh my goodness, and I think for me, because Kratos is one of my all-time favorite characters, I even got to play up all the way up to Valhalla, and I teared up because if you guys know Kratos, you guys know he's been through a lot. It puts a smile on my face to be able to see him in a different version and to see him in a much more childlike playable character that I could introduce my nieces and nephews to before actually making them
That's
play
right.
God of War, right? But okay, speaking of other game studios, I've always thought it was so cool how all the different PlayStation game studios inspire and learn from each other. And you guys also have this kind of healthy family dynamic where you guys push each other to raise the bar every time you come out with a new game. Is there anything you can share that you've learned from any of the other PlayStation studios, whether it's a general philosophy or maybe an implementation of tech?
Yeah, actually, both of them. So, implementation of tech, for example, so without going too much into the technical detail, but for this game, we had to redo our visual engine, meaning that we had a chance to update a lot of the features. And so we talked to the Guerrilla Games team, the Horizon team, on how they do an amazing ocean and the waves and the kind of water systems. So we had some really nice meetings, and those guys are super passionate. When they talk about it, it's like you can tell the amount of love they put into it. And so we were able to kind of take some information from this and adapt it to the needs of Astro, which is obviously less demanding, not being an open world, and
Mm-hmm.
but still we had a lot of levels where levels are usually islands, like they
Mm.
need to be surrounded by fog or lava or water. So having a really nice liquid system was really, really important. So that's like on a kind of technical level. But then purely on the finishing touch level, when we show these characters to these teams, such as the Guerrilla Games team or the Naughty Dog team or Santa Monica or Sucker Punch, we really want to be buttoned up and perfect because those guys are amazing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we see ourselves as the little brothers. We are kind of like the challengers. Looking at these big brothers, going,
You guys
"Oh,
are the
come on,
little
we want to be,"
Astro of the
right?
family.
So when we show our characters, we don't want them to think, it's okay, but yeah, can do better. No, we want them to be impressed, right? We want them to feel, oh wow, you guys did it as good as we did, but it's a cartoon version. And so that really raised the bar because we want to be as good,
Yeah.
and we still have a way to go, but I think we and that really helped us because that's what it's like to be around people that are really amazing, is that you want to also elevate yourself and be better. So that's been, I think, to your point, you are right, and this is not it's correct to say that the PlayStation Studio family operates as a family where people communicate and put each other into better places. Totally agree.
Well, you know what? You guys may be the little brother of the whole family, but you guys are reaching galactic, pun intended, heights with this game. And I genuinely feel like you can make more games out of Astro, and just the possibilities are endless. Earlier on, you did mention about the physics, and that's something that I also wanted to talk about. Like, the water looks so good. Like, this is how I always would look at water whenever I play video games, especially with Forbidden West and Horizon. That's actually the top that I'm wearing right now. It's from Guerrilla
Oh wow, yeah,
Studio.
yeah.
Yeah, but
Nice.
I love the physics and just how you can interact. Astro can interact with pretty much everything in the world of Astrobot,
Yeah.
right? Can you tell me more about the physics of the game? What was your favorite part? What was so challenging? What are the possible details there that we could miss as casual gamers?
So like we have a pillar in our philosophy, which is that we want the game to feel like a toy,
Mm-hmm.
right? So there's a game, of course, there's an objective. You have to get to the end of the level. There are some things to collect, but what we really want to do is to make the game this kind of amazing toy where you have an interaction and you have a response, and because it's funny, you want to do it again and again and again, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like being a kid again. And so what it means is that everything has to be reactive. So every tree that you punch, every animal that you kind of chase, everything that every water that you splash, all the leaves, everything is reactive.
Mm-hmm.
And that we've put a lot of effort into this because to us, like, a game has to be interactive. That's the whole point, right? Games are meant to be an interactive media. So
Yes.
99% of the time you are actually in control. We don't really do like much storytelling or kind of like uh, moments where you're just passive. You're always active, and so that's something that we really want to embrace. And I'm glad you bring it up because it's the kind of things that you can walk past it if you just focus on the game objectives. But if you decide to actually go off the beaten tracks and start interacting with the world, you realize the world is speaking back to you, and then it becomes like a whole new way to look at the game. So yeah.
Yes, I mean, earlier on you did mention about the DualSense controllers. I have too many to count right now, and I love all of them. So let's talk a little bit about that. Specifically, how does having the DualSense controller affect the process and how you might have implemented a design element to the game? Because while I was playing the game, which by the way, I know that I picked on pretty early, I could hear and feel the map through the controller because of the haptic feedback and because of the speakers that come from it. So like it really is true to its name of dual sense controller because you can sense the map that you're in through the controller, which I find, just amazing. The majority of games just don't really take advantage of the features of the DualSense controller as well as this game does. And why do you think that is?
So Team Asobi puts the controller at the heart of everything we do. We whenever we design a new power up or a new enemy, we always come back to the controller, right? It has to be whenever it's a power for Astro, it has to be two things. The first one, it needs to be something that supports the platforming, so that as you're running around and jumping, it needs to be something that helps you, you know, do better platforming. And the other one is that it needs to be something that when you press the trigger, the expression that comes out of it, the feeling, the sensing that you have needs to be something unique that is memorable and fun.
Yeah.
And we spend a lot of time experimenting with that. And because it's quite a colorful game and a playful game, using the speaker is actually completely natural, right?
Mm-hmm.
And using the speaker doesn't necessarily work for every kind of game. Some games it might become a bit too much if you use the speaker all the time. But for a game like Astro Bot, it's perfect, right? You have this kind of exuberance coming out of the controller, and yeah, so it's been very much at the heart of our design process. And I'm glad if you bring it up, is because it's working. So I'm really glad to hear that.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you guys did such an amazing job with it, and a lot of people usually take it for granted exploring a map. I want to ask about Team Asobi. So, may I ask how many team members you have in Team Asobi?
A team is just over 60 people, so 65. Uh,
65?
yeah,
Wow.
so quite a compact team if you think about like modern gaming, I think.
What's the biggest challenges for you as a game director in managing all these uber talented people?
I think most important is to have a cohesive vision where everybody is on board with the same thing, right? If everybody knows exactly where we're going and what Astro needs to be and what it is and what it isn't, then at that point, the next important step is to really delegate down to every single person. So we don't really have too much of a top-down culture.
Mhm.
We have a culture more of um, letting people decide how they organize their work for as long as the goal is met.
Yes.
So we have these kind of regular goals, but how people go about doing their work, it's important that they decide by themselves, because by doing that, you really boost the motivation and the ownership.
Yeah.
And also the other thing is like in a game like Astro, where there are so many, Astro is a collection of lots and lots of small ideas, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, and in order to gather all of these, you have to pull on everybody's creativity. It's not just the monopoly of, say, game designers. You need to pull from all 65 brains in order to get these little ideas. And the only way to do that is to really have a very kind of open, democratic way to work. But in order for that to work, everybody needs to know what we're making together. So that's probably the defining factor, is
Mm.
to have a common vision. Yeah.
To have a common vision and for everyone to work around that common vision. So in a
Yeah.
way, because of how Astrobot is also created with all these planets, even like you guys, everyone from Team Asobi has an opportunity to tell you what planet and their ideas and
Yes.
creativity, which is amazing. It's the perfect platform for it. So that's great. So
Yeah. Yeah. The
there's no such thing as too much chefs in the kitchen, basically.
No, but you're right. Because of the modular nature of the game, you're able to really like distribute the
Yeah.
responsibilities, and it does mean that one planet from another planet might have a different feeling, but that's okay, because in fact that's also what makes the fun of the game, is that the variety comes, and it's because two different people with two different sensibilities kind of made two different games or two different kind of planets. But over the top, what's important is to still have a cohesive coating.
Yes.
So it's a balance, but yeah, it's I think it works pretty well with 65 people. It's still we're still at a team where you know everybody's name,
Yeah.
and you could almost like remember everybody's partners and whether they have kids or whatever. It's like it's important to create a family feeling that when you cross, you come across somebody, you're having a coffee and finding something to talk about that is like relating to their personal life. Hey, how your boys doing? Or how was your trip back home to Hokkaido, like north of Japan? So knowing a little bit about that, having a kind of human scale to be able
Yes.
to create that culture is really, really important, I think.
Oh, that's amazing. So I love how you guys also place importance on the relationship of everyone in the team. So I want to ask you as well, how do you find that work life balance? Because yes, when you're at work and you're creating this team where everyone pitches in and you guys create this relationship, right? But when things have to get down to business and everyone is tired or everyone needs a break, how do you shift the energy to become more positive? And when before it even gets to that, how do you balance your work and your life so that everyone is happy and you don't drain yourself even?
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. So, on a project like Astrobot, that is like, over 3 years, you have different phases that have different kind of level of intensity, I think. Early on, for the first, like, probably like 2/3 or even 3/4, at that point, it's really like we try as much as possible. It's like an overtime culture and, a pace where we leave enough pockets of like creative time for people to kind of gather their ideas and just like distribute them around the team. Near the end, when things really start coming together, that's when you have a little bit more of intense phase. But even in that phase, what's important is that, okay, first of all, you need to be working with something that is, I think, you believe in and that is good. And you can see it getting better every day.
Mm-hmm.
And that in itself, I think already removes a lot of the tension because you can you, you can see that your work is meaningful, right? And that's a very, very important part. I think the difference, you can be working long hours, but if those long hours come from the heart and they lead to something that is meaningful, that makes sense to you, you're going to be energized by the end of it. However, if you work long hours on something you don't believe in, I think that's the opposite effect. You feel like
Yes.
drained by that, right?
Yes.
So I think it's all about the belief. Now, when people get to a point where they feel okay, I need a break, then of course, we always like give that space because there's no point. There's no point kind of forcing things. So I think it needs to come from the heart. And it's not to say that near the end of a project, we don't push hard. We do,
Yes.
but it is something that is like a an effort that people are, that really the best way to put it, yeah, is that come from the heart. And unless it comes from the heart, we shouldn't do it.
Yes, I agree. I agree. Okay, Nicholas, this has been such an amazing interview, and I'm so happy that you made the time for me, and I'm very grateful. So, thank you so much. But here's my last question that I ask all the studio directors. What is it that you are most proud of?
It's probably like I think the people's mindset, and it's like the fact that when I go around and I look at each person in the team, I can really genuinely say like first I see their happiness, and the interest in the game, and I think that means that we've made something that really moved their heart, and that's really, really important. And on top of that, when I look at the professional behind that person, I can really say you know each person brings something special to the table, something special to the project, which means that that makes them a special part of the team. So I think yeah, that's something that I'm most proud of because beyond any game, beyond any project, beyond any sales or numbers, you know, the people that are behind it, every day, it used to be like people that get up in the morning and feel like, motivated, about what they do. And, we work in video games. We are so lucky to do what we do. We should do it with a smile on our faces.
That's amazing. Very well said. Thank you so much, Nicholas, for the time.
Thank you, Sarah. Thanks so much.
Yay! We're good.